Wealth creation isn't easy by any stretch of the imagination. However, it is very simple. Now, you might think to yourself, Samuel, how can it not be easy but be simple? The reason it's not easy is because it takes discipline, and most things which take discipline are simply not easy. But at the same time, the reason it's simple is because just like doing a rep inside of a gym, it's very simple to understand the technique. It's very simple to understand what's needed to be done. The question is, are you going to be disciplined enough, which is the part where it's not easy, to do it again and again and again and again and again, my friend? Now, because of that, what I want to do is I want to talk about one of the ways that if you're starting your wealth journey can be an extremely rewarding and enriching way for you to, I guess, supersede your time frame of becoming wealthy by not doing necessarily what everybody else is doing, but doing something more nuanced and more niche, which will help you move further faster in your future. And if you're meeting me for the first time, my name is Samuel Ikenwini Kimwin. I help people create consistent and then colossal cash flow using resources and revenues hidden in plain sight. So if that sounds of value to you, be sure to hit the like if you hear something you like, and also subscribe so you can become a part of our tribe. Now, yesterday's video, I spoke about shared ownership. And one of the things I mentioned several times is that the conceptual idea of shared ownership can be leveraged. However, it's a very UK/British methodology to be used. So today I want to get a bit more international and talk about something else that you can use if you're someone who's starting out your journey, which I know is not the overarching majority of people that tune into the channel. But if you are on the beginning or early stage of your journey in terms of wealth creation, and you're looking at maybe buying your first property or getting into your first property, even if it's in a rental predicament, what can you do in order to ensure that you can support yourself to move further faster? Now, one of my previous videos a few weeks ago, I spoke about a conceptual idea, which I'm going to go a bit deeper on today, because I believe that this idea I'm going to be speaking about today is actually probably one of the best ways to set yourself up for success in terms of all avenues of your wealth first, okay? Especially if you're someone who's moving out of your home. And the specific strategy I want to speak about today, or the specific methodology I want to speak about today, the specific thing which isn't necessarily easy, but is definitely simple, is the conceptual idea of house hacking. Okay, I'm going to say it again in case you need to pick up your pen, the conceptual idea of house hacking. So let's start by defining what house hacking is. Now, traditionally put, house hacking is where you leverage your entry into a house in the form of a purchase or in the form of a rental. Okay, so you use to your advantage the fact that you're taking or getting a house to then find a way for that house to end up being paid for by itself. Okay, so you might be saying to yourself, Samuel, how do you find a way that a house you buy gets paid for by itself? And I kind of alluded to an element of this yesterday in the video where I spoke about shared ownership. I spoke about the example I gave was if you acquire a 3-bedroom apartment in a great location for worth £400,000, but you're using shared ownership to do such, and you purchase a 50% share, which is £200,000, and you put down your 10% deposit, let's say that's £20,000, and then you get a mortgage of £180,000. You now have full control of a £400,000 property, even though you are a single person who needs one room, or a couple that needs one room, right? But you now have 3 rooms, and what you can do is you can go rent those rooms out. And if the £200,000 50% that you don't own has a rent of £1,000 a month, and the £180,000 mortgage that you do have has a mortgage repayment of roughly £1,000 a month, by you having 2 lodgers who are living in your apartment with you, each paying you £1,000 per month, you now have a situation where you're living for free. So what we were doing in yesterday's video, without necessarily expressly explaining it, is we were adding house hacking to the acquisition of a property through means of shared ownership. And it's that dynamic effect of meshing strategies or adding strategies that allows wealth to compound very quickly. So now house hacking doesn't have to be done with shared ownership. It can be done in any shape or form that you like. So for example, if you are someone who's just spent, let's say, your last 3 years at university, staying in student dorms, living in student accommodation, you've now come out of that. Let's say you've got your first full-time job, you're an accountant, baby. Okay, so let's say you're making whatever, you're 45, 50,000 a year. And you realize that on that salary, you have the potential and the power to go and rent a 3-bedroom apartment, to go and rent a 3-4 bedroom house. What you can do is you can create a colleague house if you desire, right? A lot of people, we see people do this in the modern day era with a lot of these, what are they called? Reality TV shows, right? So in reality TV shows, what they do is they create quote unquote influencer houses where they bring a bunch of influencers and they all live in the same house. Sometimes they do that under a theme, okay? So there's a show my wife watches, I think it's called Finding Love or something like that. Please don't quote me because yeah, I'm no good with TV shows like that, but it's called Finding Love or something. But basically there's a house, there's a men's side, there's a woman's side, and they meet in these pods, and all of the people on the show are living at the show. Okay, so you know it's not the same as an influencer house, but it's a themed property. Okay, and you can do the exact same thing. You can go as a brand new accountant, set up a house or rent a house where you're going to live in one room, but the theme of the house is an accountancy house or a young bachelor's house. I nearly said a young player's house there, but I don't want to promote that. But a young bachelor's house or whatever the theme is. It might be Christian accountants, okay? Or accountants in Christ, okay? Who knows? But whatever the theme is, the ethos that you have as the underbelly of that property, you have that. And that's what makes your property that little bit more unique, or it gives your property a little cultural feel and a kind of ethos that other properties aren't going to have typically, because they're not doing that on purpose, but you're doing it on purpose. Now, if you are renting a 3-bedroom apartment and that 3-bedroom apartment costs you, let's call it 1,900 a month, or let's call it 2,000 a month. But again, you can have person A staying in one of those rooms, paying you 850 a month, and person B staying in another room, let's say that room has the ensuite, paying you 1,150 a month. Between the two of them, they're now paying you the total amount necessary to pay your rent. And now that allows you to just pay bills, okay? Now, that process, again, we're not necessarily using shared ownership in the example I've just given, but that process is house hacking because you've taken on board more house than you need in order to allow the house to help you succeed. And what most people don't realize is if you can eliminate some of your most your highest expenses, some of your most cantankerous expenses, right? Some of the expenses that just don't seem to want to let you go. If you can eradicate them, or if you can find ways to eliminate them, then what happens is you give yourself your best shot at your best life as it pertains to building wealth at the fastest pace possible. Okay, so this is just a general outline. Okay, now this same process doesn't have to only be done with an apartment. This could be done with a house. You could do the exact same thing with a house. This same process doesn't have to be done with a rental property. It can be done with an acquired property. So you can buy a house. Okay, let's say for example you just got your job, or you got another job, and your job is in another city, another town. Let's say you're going to move to Birmingham, or let's say you're going to move to Birmingham, Alabama, right? It doesn't matter where you are in the world, this can be done. And you decide to buy more house than you need, okay? So let's say you're buying a 4-bedroom house instead of a 1-bedroom house, but you can allocate the other 3 rooms to things that will help you succeed. Okay, so again, 2 of those rooms might be rental rooms. 1 of those rooms might be an in-house office, okay, where you charge a tariff rate for people to utilize the in-house office, all right, like a quote unquote WeWork space, but inside of the property. Now, what you could do is you can rent that on tariff windows. You can have a morning slot, you can have an afternoon slot, you can have an evening slot, where each of the residents in the house pay a certain fee to be able to have access to the at-home office for a certain amount of time. Okay, so this is something you can do. Again, this allows the rental of the house, the mortgage of the house, the expenses of the house to be paid for by themselves. Before you even wake up in the morning and have to go to your first day of work on the first day of any month, you've already figured out a process, a situation, a pathway for that property to be paid for. Now, not only is it great and beautiful and unique in the fact that the property is paid for, but what's more important is you get to live for free. And in my video 2 or 3 days ago, we spoke about the power of living for free and living freedom and how that plays a vital, essential role to developing financial freedom and then later on also developing debt freedom. But this is an essential key. This is something that anybody can do, okay? And I know there's going to be the naysayers out there who are going to be like, oh, but Samuel, they don't have the right credit to even rent a house. Oh, but Samuel, they don't have the right credit to even buy a house. Well, then go partner with someone. Like, it doesn't always have to be doom and gloom. Like, sometimes we've just got to pull ourselves up, right? And realize there's something else I can do. There's an auntie I have, a cousin I have, a friend I have, a colleague I have who actually, if I spoke to them about this, they would be on board in us doing this together. And maybe on my own, maybe because of your credit, you might not be able to get a 3-bedroom apartment on your own, but leveraging the credit of a friend or a partner or a cousin or a colleague and your capital or your legwork or your ingenuity, the two of you can come together and end up getting a 6-bedroom property, which still achieves the same purpose. Okay. So these are just some examples. And the essence of what we're talking about is house hacking. And it doesn't have to happen just in these ways I've explained. Let me give you another one. Okay. In the US of A, there is a conceptual framework for building properties known as the duplex. They also have the triplex and the fourplex. Okay. Shout out to those of you who love playing the cash flow game. Okay. Thank you, Robert Kiyosaki. So the 8plex, whatever these constructs are, and just to let you know, if you're based in the UK and you don't understand what I'm talking about, a duplex is basically 2 houses that are in one. It can be 2 apartments as well, but it's generally 2 housing entities that have come together and become one, or that have been created as one. A triplex is the same thing with 3. Okay, a fourplex, same thing with 4. Okay, all right, and an 8plex, same thing with 8. Okay, so all we're talking about is conglomerates of properties which are built in one unit. So imagine a house. In the UK, we have this a lot. We have the house where the ground floor is a flat and the first floor is a flat, for example. Okay, so in America, that would be classified as kind of like a duplex. These are also things that can be utilized to house hack. If you're in the States and you think to yourself, well, hold on a minute, I've got my opportunity to buy my first house. My question is, why would you buy one when you may potentially have the opportunity to buy 2? Because if you buy 2 and place residents or tenants in the other house, that can either pay your full way or potentially it can at least pay half the way. And why is that beneficial for you? Because now what you're doing is you're going to end up with 2 houses instead of 1. Now what you're doing is you're divinely developing your revenue state situation in a faster way than if you just bought 1. Now, what many of us don't realize is when you buy a house to live in it, you are dependent fully on your primary source of income, which for most people at the time is their job, their job, to pay for that asset, or at the time that liability, because you're living in it. It's not generating you any income. So the key and crucial element in this, when we think about house hacking, is how can we get that same entity, okay? I don't want to call it an asset too much or a liability too much because it depends on what you do with it. But how do we get that crucial asset that we desire to live in, that we are going to live in, to also be able to pay for itself? And again, whether it's the kind of quirky rework idea that I gave a moment ago, whether it's renting out rooms to lodgers like I shared earlier, whether it's opting for the duplex so you can share the other half of the property with someone else, it's up to you. But these are house hack methodologies that can be used in order to infuse your finances. Now, why is this so powerful? This is why it's powerful. If you would have ordinarily been paying $1,000, £1,000, €1,000 every single month in order to reside in your current residence or in the residence that you plan to move into, but you can eliminate, that £1,000 expense every single month. In a year, very quickly, we can do the maths. That's 12,000 new dollars, 12,000 new pounds, 12,000 new euros. In 2 years, that's 24,000 new dollars, 24,000 new pounds, 24,000 new euros. Now, the reason why this is so powerful is because as time goes on, the more and more we accumulate, the more and more we can utilize to acquire a new property. But here's the funniest thing. We can't live in 2 properties at once. So if you can't live in 2 properties at once, what happens when you're able to get to that place after, let's say, 2 years? Let's be modest. Let's say after 2 years and you've kept $24,000, euros or pounds, and now you can redeploy that into the second property asset. Now you live in the house you live in. Let's say it's a themed house, themed Christian accountant's house. Everybody's paying their way, paying their way, paying their way. You're being able to stack, stack, stack. You now go buy property number 2, and now property number 2 is your second Christian accountancy property. But the only difference now is you don't live there. So now you don't have 2 rooms available for rent. You now have 3 rooms available for rent. Now, this is where this gets amazing. Because if the ongoing cost of that property, let's say is 2,300, right? Let's just call it that. Let's say in your property is 2,300, but you're bringing that 300 out of your pocket because you take one of the rooms. But in this other property is 2,300. But now what's happening is you've got 3 people securing 3 rooms and you're generating 3,000. Now, with 3 people securing the 3 rooms, generating the 3,000, and your expenses are 2,300, you are now making 700 every single month. You've now gone from a position of the 1,000 you would have been spending if you went out there and rented a room, or if you went out there and got your little 1-bedroom apartment. You're now in a position where your 1,000 that you have every month, you only need to invest 300 every month on bills, maybe for your living expense. You got that 1,000 being retained every single month. You save that for the 2 years, or you keep that for the 2 years in order to invest that into your second property, your themed property. And now your second themed property is now bringing you £700, which is close to the amount of the 1,000 you were retaining in the first place. So now every single month we're snowballing. We're going from having £1,000 every single month recouped by having this kind of themed house, or more importantly by house hacking, to £1,700 every single month, $1,700 every single month, 1,700 euros every single month being accumulated because of the structure of how we've put these things in place. Now, this is where it gets even better, because you can do that again and you can do that again. Now, based on the law of compound interest, because you've gone from retaining 1,000 every month to now retaining 1,700 every month, it would not have to take you 2 years to go and get property number 3. It wouldn't have to take you 2 years. Why? Because you are now accumulating more wealth each and every month to do such a project. It will literally take you 13 to 14 months now in order to do property number 3. And then you just think to yourself, well, how long will it take to do property number 4? And before you know it, in less than a 5-year period, you can go from having your first property, which you used house hacking to allow it to pay for itself, to having your second property, which now compounds and allows you to retain 1,700 each and every month, to having your third property, which, let's even assume you're still only making the 700 off of that. That's now 2,400 being retained every single month. That 2,400 in less than 12 months will give you the 24,000 to be able to now redeploy for property number 4. And let's say property number 4 just gives you 700 every single month. On top of that 2,004, that now gives you 3,100 coming in every single month. Mind you, 1,000 of that is your own retained income based on your salary, etc. But the other 2,100 is actually accumulated revenue from your free properties. Now, why is this so powerful? This is powerful for several reasons. One, the cash flow. You're now making 2,100 every single month from a portfolio of assets that you've acquired. That's the first thing. The second thing, which is also quite powerful, is the accumulated equity. Now, the property you bought first 4.5, 5 years ago, potentially, based on what happens in the UK anyway, let me just go by the UK statistics, a 6 to 9% increase in property prices every single year on average. So potentially over the 4 or 5 years, you've had a 6% increase on a 6% increase on a 6% increase on a 6% increase in a bad year for your first property. Not to mention the same on your second, on your third, on your fourth. So you've got equity accumulation inside of these assets. Now, let's just assume these assets were £200,000 in terms of the sticker value of these properties when we went into them. These properties could be going up to as much as £280,000, £300,000 by the time we get to the end of these 5 years. That is an additional 1/3 added to your wealth. So if let's look at it like this. If your net worth in terms of like we're just accumulating the whole debt and everything, right? 200,000 for the first house, 200,000 for the second house, 200,000 for the third house, 200,000 for the fourth house. So in total, let's assume that you've got £800,000 of value out there. Okay, now a whole bunch of that's going to be debt. Let's say 75% loan to value, so 75% of that is in debt. But as these go up in value, let's say they've gone to 300,000 over a period of time, you've now added 100,000 on each of these properties, which is an additional 400,000 you've added to your net worth. You've added just short of £500,000, dollars or euros to your own net worth simply by acquiring assets and retaining them, because you acquired assets in a market where traditionally they increase in value, typically at a rate of 6 to 9%. Now, the reason why this is phenomenal is when you think about this, the equity is money stuck in bricks. I define that in that way, right? I always talk about equity is money stuck in bricks. I don't encourage people to necessarily invest for equity, definitely not at the beginning stages of their journey. But I do encourage people to invest for the purpose of cash flow. Now, the beautiful thing about this is if you've built your portfolio to such a degree, you now have immense leverage to do so many things. One of those things might be, if this is what you're into, to leave your job and use your accounting skills in your own business to now scale up your portfolio, if that's what you so desire. Another thing you could do, there's so many things. For the sake of time, there's so many things that can be done the moment the living for free is won. So I wanted to do this video and really just share with you that one of the most profound keys for those of you who are thinking about starting your journey, if you're someone who's saying, you know what, I want to get on this wealth train, but I just don't know how to start in order for me to gain, I'm here to tell you that one of the best lanes is to start house hacking. Think about how you can hack the situation of your own house. Think about how you can live for free, because living for free can ultimately be the financially free key that you have been waiting for to hear from me. This is Samuel Akinwin. I'm signing out. As I usually say, remember, small keys open big doors. If you got value from this video, let me know in the comments below. Good day, God bless. I'll see you on the next one. Let's go.